I said I would. She launched forward, arms around his neck like she'd been waiting all week to do exactly that. Rachel watched them. Watched the way Logan held her daughter not like a soldier, but like a man who finally knew what it meant to be home. When he stood, Rachel gestured toward the kitchen. Come on, she said. I'll make coffee. He followed her in. The sunlight through the window was soft and pale. The coffee maker gurgled quietly in the corner. Logan sat at the table, shoulders a little more relaxed now, hands wrapped around the warmth of a ceramic mug. They didn't talk about what was next. But for the first time, neither of them was thinking about leaving. The sky outside was the pale gray of late spring, and Rachel stood at the window, stirring her coffee without drinking it. The apartment was quiet, save for the distant sound of Lily humming in her room, rearranging her doll tea party for the 5th time that morning. On the couch, Logan sat with his elbows on his knees, staring down at his hands like they were foreign to him. He'd come by early, unannounced, but not unwelcome. Rachel had let him in without asking why. Now, as she turned from the window, she saw the envelope he had placed on the table. Plain. White. Heavy with things not yet spoken. I never wanted to be the man who just disappears, he said finally, voice low. But sometimes it's easier than staying. Rachel didn't answer. She just walked over, sat beside him, and placed her coffee mug down without a sound. I've been in the Air Force for over 20 years. Logan continued. Survived operations in places people only read about. Cairo, Kandahar, Haiti. I've led men into buildings we knew we might not leave. But none of it ever asked what I wanted after. Rachel's brow furrowed gently. And now? He turned to her, something flickering behind his eyes. Not fear but resolve. Now I want something different. He slid the envelope toward her. She opened it slowly, fingers trembling just enough to betray how much she understood this moment mattered. Inside, formal military discharge papers. Effective immediately. Honorable. Final. Rachel looked up, startled. You're leaving. No, he said. I'm staying. I'm leaving that life. I'm not running anymore. I've done my time. But lately, it feels like time has been doing me. He exhaled hard, shoulders falling just slightly. I used to think wearing the uniform was who I was. That without it I'd disappear. But now I know identity isn't what we wear. It's who we choose to stand beside when the dust clears. Rachel swallowed. Her throat was tight. You did this for me? No, he said quietly. I did this because for the first time I wanted to stay for something. Someone. I want mornings with mismatched mugs and late-night storybooks. I want to be there when Lily loses her first tooth. I want to fix leaky faucets, paint walls, burn toast. He trailed off, then added more softly. I want to answer to a name that's not called over a radio. Rachel's eyes brimmed, but she didn't blink. You sure you're ready for this life? She asked, half teasing, half daring. He smiled, small but steady. I've faced war zones with less fear. She reached for his hand, warm and calloused, and held it between hers. Neither of them said anything else. They didn't need to. Because some promises aren't made with vows or grand gestures. They're made in silence. And kept in the choice to stay. The folding chairs squeaked against the polished linoleum as parents shuffled into the small elementary school auditorium. Paper stars dangled from strings above the stage. A plastic banner read in crooked red letters. Congratulations, kindergarten graduates. Rachel adjusted the hem of her dress and scanned the crowd for a familiar face. Logan had said he'd try to come. Try. She didn't ask what that meant, didn't press. She just said okay, smiled, and kissed Lily's forehead as the little girl joined her classmates backstage, crown slightly askew on her curls. The lights dimmed. A muffled piano chord sounded. Tiny voices began to sing. Rachel smiled at all the wrong notes, the missed cues, the proud chaos of it all. Then, out of the corner of her eye, movement at the back of the room. She turned. There he was. Logan Hayes. No uniform. No medals. Just a light blue button-down shirt and dark jeans. Hands in pockets. Shoulders straight. A small paper gift bag hanging loosely from one wrist. He stood alone, quietly watching. But this time not from behind the lines. He was here. Present. Visible. As the performance ended and the children filed off stage, Lily spotted him. Her eyes widened. She pointed. Then she ran, arms stretched out like wings. Logan! He knelt just in time to catch her. Rachel made her way through the rows slowly, her heart pounding with something she hadn't felt in years. Not relief, not surprise. Belonging. She reached them as Logan rose, Lily perched on his hip, tiny arms looped around his neck. I thought you had a meeting, Rachel said softly, teasing the edge of emotion in her voice. I did, he replied. With a 6-year-old graduate. I wasn't going to miss it. He reached into the gift bag and pulled out a single item handmade, wrapped in pink tissue. Lily tore it open with glee. Inside was a snow globe. Tiny figures under a flurry of plastic snow. A woman, a child, a man in civilian clothes holding hands. Lily shook it. Rachel stared at the scene inside, the light catching in the swirl. You made this? She asked. He nodded. I don't want medals. I want memories. For a long moment they said nothing. Then Rachel leaned in, pressing a kiss to his cheek. Lily giggled, still shaking the globe. A photographer walked by, offered to take a family photo. Logan looked to Rachel. She nodded. Why not? Click. In the photo, 3 smiles. 3 hands held. 3 lives finally aligned. And though there was no flag, no anthem, no applause, something had been won. Not a war. Not a mission. But a future. One chosen, one built. Not by orders but by love. And though no music played as they stood together, though the moment passed without headlines or cheers, something far greater had just taken root. Promise. Not the kind sworn in uniforms or courtrooms, but the kind you make when you choose to show up quietly again and again. If that kind of vow still matters to you, stay with this story a little longer. There's more waiting to be felt. Just one word in the comments, dignity. If you believe some strengths don't need to shout. And if you're the kind of soul who still believes that steadfast love, silent courage, and the quiet act of staying are the things that hold this world together, then this space was made to feel like home. Miles leaned closer to the screen. Pause it. Trevor hit the spacebar. The girl's eyes filled the screen. Wide, alert, not empty but full of something raw. Not fear alone. Something deeper. Bravery, Miles whispered. She saved my life. Trevor looked over. What do you want to do? Miles stood slowly. I want to find her. Back outside, a drizzle had started to fall. Miles climbed into the SUV, still holding a still frame image of the girl on his phone. Start with the shelters, he said. Then the food bank. Ask around the schools if we have to. Anywhere children like her might go. Trevor nodded and made the calls. But nothing came back. No one recognizes her, Trevor reported an hour later. The local shelter hasn't seen a girl matching her description. No school records either. Miles didn't speak. He simply stared out the window at the town as it passed by, eyes scanning every sidewalk and alley, hoping for a glimpse of the girl who had given everything to save a stranger. She's not invisible to me anymore, he said quietly. Not ever again. The rain had thickened by the time Miles Griffin ordered the SUV to stop. They were just a few blocks from where he had collapsed, parked near the back lot of St. Elmo's Church, where a modest line of people, mostly adults and a few mothers with children, had begun to form under the gray sky. It was Thursday, the one day of the week when local volunteers handed out bags of canned food and bread to those who needed it most. Miles ignored the umbrella Trevor held out and stepped into the drizzle, his coat quickly soaking through. His breath misted in the air as he scanned the line, person by person. He tried not to hope too hard. But then he saw her. Near the end of the line, half hidden behind an older boy, stood the same little girl from the grainy footage. Her frame was smaller than he remembered. Someone had given her an oversized brown coat that swallowed her shoulders, but her posture, still and slightly hunched, was unmistakable. She clutched a pillowcase bag to her chest, her knuckles pale with tension. Her eyes, those same wide, haunted eyes, never stopped moving. Quiet. Watchful. She didn't push forward or ask for anything. She simply waited. Miles stayed back, watching as the line shuffled ahead. When she finally reached the table, the volunteer behind it asked her something. She didn't respond. He asked again, this time louder. She lifted one hand, almost like she was trying to explain, but without words. The man frowned and pointed at the clipboard. No name, no bag, he said, more impatient than cruel. I'm sorry, honey. We can't just give stuff out like this. Her shoulders slumped. She began to turn away, the rejection clearly not unfamiliar. Wait, Miles said, stepping forward. The volunteer looked up, surprised. You know her? Miles nodded. Yes. She's with me. The man hesitated only a second, then handed over a small paper bag filled with canned soup, a loaf of bread, and a granola bar. Next, he called out. The girl, Harper, took the bag carefully with both hands but didn't look up. She stepped to the side slowly, unsure whether to run or stay. Miles knelt down, ignoring the throb in his knees and the sting of rain trickling down his back. You saved me, he said softly. That night. I remember. She hugged the bag to her chest, silent. Her hair clung to her forehead, wet and tangled. I don't want to give you money, he continued gently. I want to give you something real. A home. A place where you don't have to beg for food or sleep in the cold. No one's going to make you come with me. It's your choice. Still no words. But then her eyes, those dark, guarded eyes, finally rose to meet his. And for the first time they didn't flinch. She looked at him not with fear, but with something closer to curiosity. Miles extended his hand, palm up, fingers relaxed. I won't hurt you. I won't let anyone else hurt you either. There was a pause. Long rain tapped steadily against the sidewalk. Then, with a movement so small it could have been missed, Harper reached out, not to take his hand, but to gently brush her fingers against the edge of his coat sleeve. Just a touch. Just enough to say, I'm listening. And that was enough. Miles stood slowly and took off his coat, wrapping it around her small shoulders. She didn't pull away. She let him guide her toward the SUV. As the door closed behind her, she glanced once through the window, at the line at the church, at the sidewalk she had walked alone so many times before. And then she looked forward, toward something new. The house sat at the edge of town, hidden behind a line of old oak trees, their branches swaying gently under the soft drizzle. It wasn't a mansion, just a two-story home with creaking porch steps, flower beds long since overgrown, and windows that glowed warm against the gloom of a gray sky. But to Harper, it looked like something out of a dream she never allowed herself to have. She didn't speak as she stepped out of the SUV. She didn't run either. She simply stood there, eyes scanning the yard, the porch swing swaying in the wind, the faint light spilling through the front window. Her fingers clenched tightly around the soggy paper bag of food she still hadn't opened. Miles Griffin didn't rush her. He stepped ahead, slower than usual from the lingering ache in his chest, then turned and said over his shoulder, It's your choice. No one's going to force you to stay. Harper hesitated. The coat he had given her hung heavy around her shoulders, damp at the hem. Her pillowcase bag was slung diagonally across her body like always, still tied with the same frayed rope. After a few moments she followed him. Inside, the house smelled of old wood and lemon soap. The air was warmer than the street, but not stifling. A small lamp near the entry table cast a soft glow over framed photographs, some in color, some faded with time. Miles didn't stop to explain the pictures. He simply pointed down the hall and said, Come on, I'll show you around. The tour was quiet. She didn't ask questions and he didn't expect her to. He showed her the kitchen with its cracked tile backsplash, the living room with a faded blue couch, and a bathroom with a light that flickered if you turned it on too fast. Then he opened a door at the end of the hallway. This one's yours if you want it. It was small, but it didn't feel empty. There was a real bed. Not a mattress on the floor. Not a church bench or a blanket behind a dumpster. A shelf stood beside it, holding a lamp and a few old books. A little dresser with brass handles sat beneath a window framed by blue curtains. On the bed rested a stuffed bear, brown with one ear flopped over. Harper stepped inside slowly. She didn't touch anything. Not yet. She just looked. Then, without a word, she walked to the bed and gently laid her pillowcase bag at its foot. She sat down on the edge, feet not quite touching the floor, and folded her hands in her lap. Miles stood in the doorway for a moment, watching. There's soup on the stove if you're hungry, he said, voice low. I'll let you settle in. That night she ate without a sound. Miles didn't press her with questions. He sat across from her at the kitchen table, sipping tea, telling quiet stories about the heater that groaned at midnight or the oak tree in the backyard that once split during a thunderstorm. Harper didn't respond, but she listened. Her eyes followed every word. She wasn't just hearing. She was remembering. Days passed. She stayed. Still silent, but something was changing. She no longer flinched at every creak in the floor. She brushed her hair in the mornings, slow, thoughtful strokes as if detangling more than just knots. She sat on the porch in the afternoons, curled up in the old rocking chair like she had always been there. Miles didn't ask why she never spoke. He didn't ask about her mother, or where she used to sleep, or why she always checked the door twice before going to bed. He just made sure there was food in the fridge, clean sheets on her bed, and a light left on in the hallway just in case. One evening she walked to the bookshelf in the living room and pulled out a children's book. Worn but well loved. She didn't open it. She simply handed it to him. "You want me to read it?" he asked. She nodded. And for the first time since she entered his world, Harper leaned back on the couch, rested her head against the armrest, and let her eyes close, safe for once in a place where no one expected her to run. The wind had shifted by morning. It wasn't as bitter anymore. Less bite, more breath. Through the kitchen window, golden light spilled across the table where Harper now sat each day, legs tucked beneath her, spoon clinking quietly in a bowl of oatmeal. She never said a word. But her presence had become as steady as the sunrise. Miles watched her from across the table, his coffee cooling between his palms. She had started doing little things, like coming into the kitchen when she smelled toast, or folding the throw blanket neatly after sitting on the couch. Once she even let him wash her coat. Another time she found a soft yellow sweater in the hall closet, his late wife's, and hugged it like it had always belonged to her. He never asked questions. Never pushed. He simply made room. That morning began like any other. Until the phone rang. Miles stood to answer it. Griffin Residence. It was his attorney. Just some quick follow-up on the paperwork for the trust he'd quietly established in Harper's name. As he spoke, he turned back toward the table and stumbled. A sharp pain shot through his lower back. His knee buckled, and the coffee mug in his hand slipped, shattering against the tile. The sound was like a gunshot in the stillness. Harper's head snapped up. Her bowl clattered to the floor, oatmeal splashing across her bare feet. She looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time with more than just curiosity. She saw fear. And something in her cracked wide open. "Are you okay?" she whispered. The words were small, raspy, like wind through a keyhole. But they were clear. Miles froze. His heart thudded, not from pain but disbelief. She had spoken. Her voice. After all this time. She took a step forward, arms halfway raised, unsure. "Do you need help?" she asked again. He nodded slowly. Just a little ache. "I'll be fine." She reached for his arm, not timidly, not like a child afraid of rejection, but like someone determined to offer what little she had. Her touch was light but intentional. Together they walked to the living room. He sank onto the couch with a wince, exhaling a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Harper stood in front of him, hands fidgeting at her sides, her eyes flickering between fear and something else. Hope, maybe. Then her voice came again, this time shakier. "Are you really my dad now?" The words hung in the air like something sacred. Miles blinked hard. His throat tightened. "Only if you want me to be." She nodded. Once. Then again. Her lips quivered. Not from cold but from something heavier, more human. "Okay, Dad." He couldn't speak. Instead, he reached out slowly and pulled her into his arms. She didn't resist. She melted into his chest like she had always belonged there. Like she had been waiting her whole life for someone to hold her and mean it. Outside, the clouds parted. A sliver of sunlight cut through the gray. And inside, for the first time in years, two hearts beat in quiet harmony. Not alone. Not anymore. The next morning felt different. It wasn't just the sun streaming through the windows or the scent of spring in the air. It was the way Harper moved. She sat at the small kitchen table before being asked, legs tucked under her like usual, a spoon gently clinking in her bowl of oatmeal. She had started coming without invitation, like the house was hers now too. Miles watched her, coffee cup in hand, pretending to read the paper but really just marveling at her quiet presence. She wore that yellow sweater again, his late wife's, the one she had found and held like a secret. When the phone rang, he stepped away to answer it. It was his attorney again, finalizing trust paperwork for Harper. But as he turned to return to the table, pain seized his back. The mug shattered on the floor. This time Harper didn't just freeze, she acted. And when she whispered, "Are you okay?" he heard not just concern but connection. Later when she asked, "Are you really my dad now?" and then called him dad, he realized something had changed permanently. Two lives, both broken in different ways, had somehow stitched themselves together with nothing more than kindness, patience, and the courage to stay. Sometimes healing doesn't come in grand gestures. It comes in quiet mornings, in shared silence. In the moment a scared little girl dares to whisper dad. True family is not always blood. Sometimes it's found in the ones who refuse to walk away. If this story touched your heart, leave a comment below sharing your thoughts or a memory about someone who changed your life. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss another story that restores your faith in humanity.